No one in Washington expected that Albert B. Fall would become the center of one of the most dangerous corruption scandals in early American history. He didn't look like a villain, a rancher from New Mexico turned senator, then trusted with power. But in 1921, everything changed. Under President Warren G. Harding, Fall was appointed Secretary of the Interior, a position that gave him quiet control over something incredibly valuable. Not gold, not land, oil. At the time, oil meant power, and the U.S. government had reserves set aside for one purpose only: war. These were emergency supplies meant to fuel the Navy in times of crisis, protected, untouchable. Two of the most important reserves sat far from Washington's spotlight: Teapot Dome, a strange rocky formation in Wyoming, and Elk Hills, a massive oil field in California. Officially, these lands were off limits to private companies, but unofficially, the right person could change that, and Fall was that person. Between 1921 and 1922, behind closed doors, he began making quiet deals. No public announcements, no competitive bidding, no transparency. Just secret meetings, hidden agreements, and carefully crafted legal cover. The men on the other side of those deals were not ordinary businessmen. They were powerful oil tycoons: Harry F. Sinclair and Edward L. Doheny. Together, they gained access to some of the most valuable oil reserves in the country. But access like that doesn't come free. Because while the deals looked official on paper, something else was happening behind the scenes. Money was moving. Gifts were exchanged. Loans were given. Favors were quietly returned. Fall had used his position not to protect national resources, but to trade them for personal gain. At first, no one could prove it, but something felt wrong. Rumors began to spread through Washington. Journalists started asking questions. Political rivals began to pay attention. And then came the man who refused to let it go: Thomas J. Walsh. In 1923, Walsh launched a full Senate investigation. What he uncovered would shock the nation. Letters, financial records, witness testimonies. Piece by piece, the truth came into focus. This wasn't just a questionable deal. It was corruption at the highest level. The oilmen hadn't just leased land, they had bought influence. Fall had used his position not to protect national resources, but to trade them for personal gain. At first, no one could prove it, but something felt wrong. Rumors began to spread through Washington. Journalists started asking questions. Political rivals began to pay attention. And then came the man who refused to let it go: Thomas J. Walsh. In 1923, Walsh launched a full Senate investigation. What he uncovered would shock the nation. Letters, financial records, witness testimonies. Piece by piece, the truth came into focus. This wasn't just a questionable deal. It was corruption at the highest level. The oilmen hadn't just leased land, they had bought influence. Fall had accepted money and gifts from the very men he gave access to. And when questioned, he claimed it was all about national security, that the Navy needed immediate access to oil. But the evidence told a different story, because when the records were finally exposed, they revealed a clear pattern of personal enrichment. The courts stepped in. The leases were declared corrupt. The agreements were canceled. Control of the oil reserves was returned to the government, but the damage had already been done. What made Teapot Dome so powerful wasn't just the crime, it was what it represented. A small group of powerful men, a government official, wealthy industrialists, and a determined investigator had exposed how easily public trust could be manipulated behind closed doors. To the American public, it confirmed their worst fear, that government power could be quietly sold to the highest bidder. The consequences were massive. Fall resigned in disgrace, and after years of legal battles, he made history, becoming the first former U.S. cabinet official ever convicted of a felony for crimes committed in office. The administration of Warren G. Harding never recovered. its reputation was permanently damaged, and when Harding died later that same year, he never fully answered for what had happened under his leadership. Trust in government was shaken. But the scandal didn't end there. It forced change. New laws, stronger oversight, greater transparency in how public resources were handled. Teapot Dome became more than a scandal. It became a warning. A reminder that democracy can be weakened not just by enemies outside, but by decisions made in secret within. Even decades later, the name still means one thing: corruption. Because this wasn't just a story about oil, it was a story about power, about greed, and about how close a government came to being quietly sold, and how in the end, truth, persistence, and the rule of law brought it back into the light. If you want more true stories like this, stories they don't teach the full way, hit subscribe.